why you might owe money to the ATO this year, and how to avoid it in the future. Good morning, everyone. This is Canna Campbell here, financial planner, and welcome back to SugarMamma's Fireplay, the podcast where we ignite your financial independence, fuel your early retirement goals and dreams, and together I help you create sustainable financial independence for life. Today we're talking about something that's popping up all over social media right now, especially from our younger generations, that is Gen Z. And that is, instead of getting a nice juicy tax refund this year, like they used to, thousands of people are discovering that they actually owe money to the ATO. And for some, it's not just a couple of $100s, it's actually thousands of dollars. Now, I want to be really clear. This is not about pointing fingers, shaming, or belittling anyone whatsoever. In fact, I actually really want to commend the people for speaking up about this issue online, because by them sharing their experiences and even their frustrations, they're opening up a conversation that can help everyone in every generation. And that is to better understand how our tax system works, why this has happened or might happen, and most importantly, how to actually plan in a practical, strategic, even proactive manner so that this never blindsides you or anyone else ever again. So in this episode, we're going to cover why you might suddenly owe money to the ATO instead of getting a refund, the common traps, why this is actually happening, how to pay back this debt, this tax debt, without wrecking your financial journey, and most importantly, because I'm a proactive type of person and I'm solution-based, the practical strategies that are going to prevent this from ever happening again for you year after year. So by the end of this episode, I'm hoping that not only will you understand why this happens, but you'll have a brilliant game plan in place to stay in control and even to turn this into a chance to improve your overall financial literacy and resilience. So, why is this happening? And if you just jump on TikTok, you'll see it's just blown up. Now, so what's happening is people have suddenly found themselves with a tax bill instead of a tax refund. And of course, when this happens, it's natural to panic. But before we get into fixing it, can we understand first why it's happening in the first place? So from what I've seen and what many accountants are saying, the biggest culprits are HECS and help debt, and the indexation, and of course, under withholding. So if you have HECS or help debt, the ATO requires repayments once your income hits a certain threshold. Now, this year, I think it was around about $51,000. But your employer can only take out those repayments if they actually know that you have the HECS debt in the first place. So if you didn't tell them or you changed jobs and you didn't update your declaration, you may have actually been undertaxed all financial year. Add this to the recent indexation of 7.1%, which has been the highest in decades, and then suddenly your balance has jumped and your payments simply weren't keeping up, hence you get a tax bill. So that's the biggest culprit. The second culprit, which is shortly behind it, is the multiple jobs and the whole tax-free threshold trap. So if you work 2 or maybe more, 3 or 4 or 5 jobs, only one of them is allowed to have the tax-free threshold applied. If both jobs or all of your jobs have this tax-free threshold applied, you won't have enough tax withheld overall. Now, it might feel great in your weekly, fortnightly, or monthly pay packet, but it's going to smack you in the face at the end of the financial year when you do your taxes, because the ATO haven't been able to access and take the right amount of tax through the financial year. Hence, a whopping great big tax bill. Then, of course, there is the trap of the side hustle income. You know, a lot of people have picked up freelancing work. They're part of the gig economy. They've got like online businesses, you know, doing lots of little things to help bring in extra money. And that is honourable. That is brilliant. That is great. That is how we are all keeping our heads above water with such an expensive world right now. But here's the catch. All that extra income is taxable, and no one's taking tax out of it for you. If you don't go and set the money aside yourself, it's so easy to get caught. This is where I'm trying to explain to you. It is the onus, the responsibility comes on you to set aside and take away that tax money and also make sure it's the right amount. The ATO can't do this for you when it's a side hustle income. And then the final reason why people are getting stuck is they haven't made any changes after a pay rise. So if you've had a salary increase and you didn't review your tax withholding form or your details weren't updated, you may have not had, again, the right amount of tax taken out for your new tax income level. Now, the important thing is to remember here is it isn't about, you've done something wrong. Nothing has been done wrong at all. And you certainly haven't been naughty. But it's just about, I guess, not being aware of how all these little small like life admin oversights or changes in your work situation can actually snowball into a tax bill, a big tax bill, over time throughout the financial year. So why does this matter when it comes to financial literacy? You see, when something like this happens, it's so tempting to be embarrassed, be ashamed, upset, frustrated, even angry. But here's the truth. These are the beautiful moments that actually are opportunities for growth, for reflection, and to step right up and take responsibility and ownership and make sure that you never repeat history ever again. You learn from your mistakes. That's how we become smarter, more resilient people. And this opportunity, what's happening here for people getting these tax bills is they will force us, if we're willing to do the work, to understand how the tax system actually does work us and how to work around it in a legal manner. It also shows us the importance of actually forward planning our cash flow and our financial responsibilities. And it's also a reminder that your payslip, it isn't actually always telling us the full story. We can't rely on that as fact, as truth. That is a guide. It's not set in stone. So the fact that Gen Z are talking about this openly online is really powerful. And because financial literacy grows when we share stories, mistakes, and lessons learned, this is really important. I hope this trend of sharing, oversharing even, continues. So how do we pay back tax when we have a tax debt? Now, if you do have a bill, you're one of those people going, yep, that was me. I got angry when I thought I was getting a tax refund, and then I realized I owed $2,500. I need to do something about it. What to do? All right, this is where we're going to get practical. The most important thing to do is do not ignore it. I know you want to. Is probably just crushed a few of your goals for this year. You're thinking, you want to pay this, I can't go on holiday, or I can't buy myself this or that until I pay this off. That's the truth. That's the lesson we need to learn. So just don't ignore it. The first thing I recommend you do is call the ATO. Be upfront and explain your situation, human to human. Now, the ATO will work with you on this. They want their tax money repaid, and they'd much prefer to put you on a plan than having to chase you for months. It's in their interests to have something that's practical and affordable and eventually get the monkey off your back and get that money back. So you need to go on a payment plan. Now, this is where your repayments are spread over time. They can be, weekly, fortnightly, or monthly, but you can actually start to budget for this, and you're essentially budgeting to pay off your debt, which can really take, I guess, the frustration, the pain, the disappointment of this, because you can then say, okay, well, I'll stick to this payment plan, and then, I can see light at the end of the tunnel, and I'll be back on my way again. And of course, you can also make ad hoc lump sum payments. If you get some extra income, a bonus, or, you sell something, or, you get given some money even, throw it at the debt. Throw it at the debt as a priority. You don't want to be chasing your tail, and enjoy that light at the end of the tunnel comes so much sooner and faster by doing that. It will feel good. It will feel responsible, and you'll be able to look beyond this and think, okay, what am I going to do going forward? And of course, as I said, on that topic of chasing your tail, you've got to make sure at the same time you stay on top of your current or even new tax obligations. The last thing you want to do is fall into the trap of paying last year's tax bill while underpaying this year's tax. That is how so many people get stuck in this never-ending loop of owing money for the last financial year, but also owing money this financial year. You want to be ahead of the game, and I'll share with you some tips and ideas. And of course, once you've gone and spoken to the ATO, go back and check for any missed deductions. Compare last year's return and the year before that, because there is a possibility that you may have missed claiming something legitimate, like a work-related expense, that could actually reduce how much money you owe to the ATO. You might actually be pleasantly surprised and, well, gosh, I forgot about my income protection I can claim, or gosh, I forgot I have a margin loan, I forgot that interest, or yes, I've got that receipt for where I donated some money to charity. Why is that not showing? It is quite possible that with our busy, hectic, easily distractible lives that we've forgotten some of those deductions. And by cross-referencing against your last year's return, or even, going back, say, 3 or 4 years' returns, you'll find something that you can actually claim and reduce that money that you owe to the ATO. So how do we avoid this in the future? And this is what I'm really excited about sharing with you. So we can turn this frustrating situation into a permanent win. I genuinely believe this. So what I recommend you do, and these are the things that I follow myself as someone who has multiple sources of income. I'm self-employed and my income can really be very volatile. I've got to be really ahead of the game when it comes to managing my tax. So these are the things that I do and highly recommend. Number 1, keep your details up to date. Always make sure that obviously your tax file number is correct and that declaration has been completed, particularly when you start a new job or you change jobs. Even things like getting a promotion and a pay rise, make sure everything is up to date. Second thing I recommend is making sure you declare any HECS or help debt that you may have. Now, this will ensure that your employer withholds the right repayments from your tax so that you can see that debt coming down, regardless of your tax debt. Then I recommend that you set the tax-free threshold correctly, which means only your main job you should have this applied. That's it, just the one. You can't use it anywhere else. A great hack that I also recommend is having a separate savings account for your tax money. This is particularly valuable if you're someone like me that has multiple jobs or side hustles, because you can move a certain percentage of each payment every time you get paid into this account. At the moment you are paid, you are removing the temptation to spend that. And it means, yes, you may not have accounted for the exact dollar amount, but at least you'll have, 90% of that tax money set aside, ready to go. But of course, always overestimate how much tax if you want to play it safe, which is what I personally do. Another great strategy is to consider a pay-as-you-go tax installments. So this is where you can actually opt to pay your tax monthly instead of having to pay it, say, quarterly or even like at the end of the financial year, which can be, a large tablet to swallow. One thing I actually do as well is I prepay my tax, which I know I sound like a bit of a goody-goody two-shoes, but it's something I actually really enjoy doing. So when I get paid, I will actually, the money comes into my business account, I pay myself a salary through my drip feed technique, but then I will also, using the biller codes, prepay that money to the ATO. So I'm not even using a separate savings account always. Sometimes I'm actually paying it directly to the ATO. So it sits as a credit in the tax portal. So when my accountant emails me to say, okay, this is what you owe in BAS and your activities statements, it's 9 times out of 10, it's actually already been paid, which is just feels really nice. And this is something anyone can do, just use the biller codes. But of course, keep in mind, once you use those biller codes and you pay to the ATO, you can't get it refunded back to you. It just sits there in credit. So that will then force you to check what your responsibilities are per month or per quarter or however you choose to do it. Also, invest time learning about what is legitimately tax deductible. Understand what you can claim, what you could even claim even without a receipt. The ATO recently changed, the amount of deductions you can claim without actually showing a receipt, because they understand that people sometimes do lose receipts. And initially, I think it was around about up to $300 a year in work-related expenses that you can claim without showing a receipt. There are now another option where you can claim up to $1,000 without receipts. So learn about these things and also look at your income and look at what are legitimate claims, things that you may not even thought about claiming. And even things like, travel from your office, say, to a meeting, you can claim that. Now, you might be thinking, well, why would I bother claiming an $18 Uber trip or cab ride? Yes, might be a small deduction, but that deduction is money that's potentially owed to you. And if there's 4 or 5 of these, that's money that is actually could be back in your pocket or help pay that ATO tax debt off a lot sooner. So really know what you can legally claim as a deduction. I think you'd be surprised that there's a lot more you can actually claim than you probably realized. And of course, learning about what's taxable. Your side hustle is taxable. Trading crypto, that's taxable. If you are making money from it, it's a good chance it's going to be taxable. So don't think I've got this great side hustle that makes me, $300 a week cash. That $300 a week is taxable. And of course, when in doubt or when overwhelmed or confused, get some advice from a tax agent. They will help make sure that you are set up correctly, you're not underpaying the tax, or you're not missing out on important, valuable tax deductions. Yes, it's going to cost you some money, but that investment will save you so much money long term, but also save you so much stress and anxiety when it comes to the end of each financial year and discovering whether you owe money or whether you're actually getting a nice return again. So it's something I would strongly recommend, even if it means just having a once-off session and doing a bit of an educational session so that you're more informed and you're more on top of your finances. So for everyone who's listening right now, if you are feeling stressed about owing money to the ATO, I want you to hear this. You're not alone. There are thousands and thousands, or tens of thousands of people out there who have discovered that they owe money to the ATO and not getting a tax refund. And you are definitely not failing when it comes to your money if you're one of these people. This is something that you can definitely fix and you can make sure it doesn't ever happen again. Tax bills actually happen to the best of us. They happen to all of us. They're a normal part of life. The problem here is this generation probably have never had this before, and so they're shocked, they're horrified, and they're going through a wave of emotions, which is pretty normal and natural. But right now, what really does matter is actually how you respond to this, how you use this as a lesson to actually build smarter habits going forward. And you tell people about what you're doing and how you're managing it so you help other people avoid this trap as well. But even better, how to make sure that it never happens again. If you take anything from this episode, let it be this. Being proactive with your tax planning is one of the simplest, but also the most powerful ways to protect your financial future and feel a sense of financial harmony and responsibility in your life. Now, if you loved this topic, you loved hearing this advice, or you want to hear more stories of a particular topic, please make sure that you send me a DM on Instagram. And in the meantime, if you have been through this, send me a DM so I can help share any more advice or tips or strategies to make sure that you pay this debt off as quickly as possible. Now, as always, keep that financial fire burning bright within. This is Sugar Mama's Fire.